All right. For those of you who have not caught any of the interviews just yet, this is Jason Stone, and I sit down with Logos users to explore how they use the software. So this is less a how to use it based on the support articles or the website. This is more about how our users, how my friends use Logos. And so this has been a lot of fun. This is probably interview 25 or so. I've sat down with pastors and students, a fiction writer, group leaders, just daily devotional users, and I feel like a handful of other ones that I can't think of off the top of my head right now. But today I get to sit down with a friend of mine who we've been friends for years, Mike Colburn here, who will give a bit of an intro himself in a moment. But I get to sit down with Mike. Mike, you might not know this before we get into your intro. You shared a tagging video when we were doing Logos Daily, and it's on YouTube still. I'll probably just add it. I'll make sure I add it to this video in one of the corners somewhere and or in the description. But that has been incredibly helpful to all sorts of users. And I get comments all the time to clarify different parts of that process. I don't even know if you're still using that same process, are you?
To an extent, yes.
Okay.
But
Yeah, it's out there.
not as extensively as I could use it, but yeah.
No, it's out there in YouTube land somewhere, and I'll make sure that I add that to this dialogue as well. But Mike, before we get rolling with the Logos side, can you share maybe a dad joke and then a little bit about yourself to contextualize how you use Logos on the regular?
Yeah. Well, you put me on the spot with the bad dad joke.
No, I didn't.
I did ask you earlier before we got started if you wanted a good dad joke or a bad dad joke, and I couldn't come up with a good dad joke.
I said one of both would be fine. But
well,
whatever you're feeling, I know you have a plethora
we
of them.
could
Those
let the
books behind
users
you
we could
are
let the
not.
users decide if they're good or bad.
That's fair. Comment below
Is
if
that
it's good
fair?
or bad. I was going to say though, those books behind you are not commentaries. I'm sure those are just books full of dad jokes.
That's why they're blurred out. You may or may
Yeah.
not know if they are or not. Yeah. So I've got a very important question for you, Jason.
Mm-hmm. What's that?
What do you call a boomerang that won't come back?
I don't know. I'm trying. I don't know. What's that?
It's a stick. Sorry.
Just
You want
stick.
more? Did you not get enough? You want
I
more?
could.
Yeah.
Well, let's do one later. So you gotta watch through the interview if you want the next dad joke. Yeah. So what are you doing now? I know you have your podcast and your blog and you're working as well. So tell us a bit about what you're up
Yeah.
to, Mike.
I mean, work-wise, my wife and I run a financial company predominantly in the insurance space, but we also do asset management, life insurance, disability, annuities, all kinds of stuff. So we do that by day. We have a pretty large company. There's about 230 people that work with us in our company, and so we just kind of get to manage and run and operate and lead and that kind of stuff, which gives us the flexibility and freedom to do kind of our hobbies. And most of our hobbies are focused on kingdom building hobbies. I absolutely love studying. I love academic work. I love research inside of Logos. I love writing, articles that go on my blog. I love testing biblical logic, what people claim they think that the Bible says, and kind of testing it and researching it. It's part of the reason why I use Logos the way I do. So, and there's other things that I enjoy doing, gardening and telling bad dad jokes and woodworking and reading and I don't know, misbehaving at times. At least my wife tells me that. So
Awesome.
yeah, I don't know what else you want to know, but that's the good,
Yeah, I
bad, and
mean,
the ugly.
you have two dogs, Bean and Ren. I think that would round it out.
I have two dogs, Bean and Red. They're both huskies. They're both female. I have twin girls that are 15, and I have my lovely wife. So I live in a home of females. So there's that. Yeah. And I'm
There's no
surviving
comment.
somehow. I
I
don't
won't say
know how I'm
anything.
surviving.
Yeah. So today we are going to cover a handful of items, and I'll share the kind of the goalposts or the mile markers as you start to share your screen. And then I'm just going to put you in the hot seat, ask some clarifying questions as they come up, maybe go on a tangent, but we'll aim to kind of approach these particular mile markers as we navigate how you use logos. So I think what you shared with me was AI features, bookmarks in different capacities. We'll probably touch on that throughout, I think you said. How you use search inside of logos, and then the context menu, specifically around lemma and morph searches. Did I miss anything?
No, I don't think so. Although that's not very much because there's a lot that logos can do.
Well, if we go on a tangent, I think that would be just fine, but that's also a lot to cover. Yeah. So if you're ready,
Good
we
deal.
could dive into it.
Let's do it.
You got the dark mode.
I do.
Yeah, you
I
do.
predominantly enjoy the dark mode the most because it's easier on my eyes. Not because I'm a dark person, just because it's easier on my eyes. But you'll
Well, I like
see,
it.
so when I start out, my particular screen is fairly clean when I get started. This is my default screen. I have the favorites, which is what we're going to get, talking about. That may look like most people don't even know about the favorites, or they don't even use it. So this is a template that I have, a layout. It's actually right here on my screen. It's the default. And so we're going to talk about how to organize throughout kind of what I do and why I do it. First of all, if you haven't used bookmarks, I guess that would be a great place to start, is where to find it.
Mm-hmm.
So in the tools, it is a tool. You can just search favorites, not bookmarks. That's the wrong thing. You can search favorites.
There it is.
And there it is. You can open it. Since I already have it open, it's already there. But you can drag it, change the size, whatever it is. One thing I was mentioning to Jason that Logos needs to fix
Yes.
is it's hard to change the size. You can see it just doesn't behave well at all. But once you find it,
Is that the same for like information and power lookup? Do those smaller panels give you the same trouble?
I don't know. That's a good question. We can test it. No. Wait, yes. Yeah, yes. It
Okay.
does.
Okay.
Anyways. But it more than likely is, as Jason pointed out, it's probably just my massive screen that's causing the problem.
Yeah. It's not you, it's them.
Yeah, so first of all, it might look a little bit different. The common idea here to favorites is you can add folders. And then once that folder is created, well, I should probably say that the folder will be added wherever you have highlighted. So if you highlight, one of these like topical or some other one that I have in here, wherever you select, when you go to add a folder, it will add it in that particular one. This is inside of Smart Search. We're going to talk about Smart Searches coming up. You can name it. And then now you have a place that you can drag literally everything and anything into it to organize stuff. So I think of the favorites as a organizational tool for things that I want to get back to later on. One suggestion that I would make to anyone starting this is to create a topical folder, and then A through Z, just create subfolders. And then inside of here, you'll begin to kind of fill out topics that as you go through, you'll kind of drag things in that you want to remember and build it out to whatever you want. That's pretty simple to do. It's just selecting the topical, create the topical folder, then select topical, and then add new. And when you select add new, it will ask you, and you would just type in A, B, C, and just create those folders. So first of all, is just kind of structuring it. And then it's going to be, and as we go through this, kind of how I use it, you're going to see me adding things or showing you things that I already added for today's conversation. To go back to things that you want to remember later on. So it's a pretty cool feature that very few people I have found leverage to its capacity.
Before we get into it, can I ask why you went with favorites or folders instead of like clippings? like a clipping on atonement or a clipping on the covenant, and then you could just build it out or notes or something like that.
Yeah, because they're not quite as, so you can search inside the favorites. So depending on how you, but the one thing you have to remember with favorites is the only search that it does is it searches titles. So it's not going to search like an entire document. It's not going to search inside of whatever the link is that you have. That might be something that maybe Logos will figure out later on. That would be cool. But for now, I use clippings, but then once I do the clippings, I would then add that clipping to my favorites is what I would do. Or I would add notes to this that I wanted easy access inside of a topic is what I do.
That makes sense.
All right. So let's just get straight into doing some searches. You want to go that direction?
Yeah. Some AI search or AI search capabilities.
Yeah. So let's do search capabilities first. So obviously the main search button, most people are going to be aware of the different searches at the top. I'm not going to go through all these because, as Jason said, this isn't a tutorial. I'm just going to show you predominantly what I use and some things that I focus on. I'm mainly using the search button for the Bible or for books. And then I am going to either use precise search or smart, depending on if I'm looking for a specific quote or if I'm looking for something that the AI can help me with. And then I use this drop down quite a bit because not only do I have a ton of different resource collections, you can create resource collections as well as you're typing. And so whether or not you have a bunch, as you can see, I have a ton. I mean, literally a bunch. Okay. So whether or not you have those, you don't have to have those. I'm not going to show how to make those on this particular dialogue.
We've covered collections for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. But I use them and I think they're very important because it allows you to perform the same search in a smaller data set or a larger pool. And depending on what you're kind of telling the AI to use, it will spit out different kind of books, resources, answers, all that stuff. So it's very helpful as far as kind of honing in on what you're trying to work through. So the first thing I just want to do is let's just do a simple smart search in all of my resources, which, by the way, I don't think I told the audience about my library. I don't know if you want to go through some of that or not.
No, I think that would be helpful just to do, as you're jumping into this, I think that'd be helpful.
Yes. Depending on the size of your library, I mean, Logos is obviously extremely powerful, but it's only as powerful as the way you use the tools and the features, but also as the size of your library, because the more data you have, the more you can kind of find things. This has been a 10-year journey for me. I am indebted, literally, to Logos. I don't want to think about how much money I've sent their way, but I think I've paid several people's salaries. Not really, that's a joke. Probably a bad dad joke, by the way. But yeah, so I had started out with just some basic, smaller libraries, and I have added on collections, as many as I possibly could, just because my methodology is the more data I have, the better research I can do. And so having a library that's got almost 32,000 books is great, but I'm never going to read all of them. Let's be honest. I couldn't even if I tried. So it's really important to know how to segment the library, how to search, smartly, if that's a word, efficiently, so that I can access books that I need and then do further research with those books. So that's why it's important to continue to kind of build out your library.
And then I think you said you're on the Pro subscription. I think you mentioned
Yes, I am. Yeah. And some people don't. I don't know why. Some people don't like the subscription. I love it because I know that I'm going to get all the updates when they happen, and they're constantly doing that. I value it. I think it's a helpful model, even though some people don't like to continue to fund. I'm the opposite as a business owner. I want to continue to fund Logos because I want them to continue to stay in business, because I really, really, really appreciate the resource and the tools. I don't know how people still study analog. I don't.
Yeah.
It's foreign.
Oh, well, that's a good perspective though, with the shift in to subscription with Logos. So I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, you can pay me later, Jason,
You
or
got it.
Logos can pay me
I
later,
mean,
whichever one. Yeah. All right, so let's get into some searches. So depending on what you might, one of the cool things about the smart search, so whether or not, make sure that you're on smart, because that's what we're going to, by the way, that does not determine your IQ. That's just the AI model. That doesn't mean by moving into that particular section, you're all of a sudden
it
smart.
makes you smart.
Yeah. But if you were doing, so recently I've been doing some study in Daniel because of a upcoming live stream that I'm going to be doing on someone else's channel. And so I just, I'll just kind of type this out. So where does, I'm actually going to do this in actually Bible first. So let me do that first. Where does the Bible talk about evenings and morning? All right. So I don't think people use smart search as much in the Bible. Like if you're looking for things or ideas or concepts or people or whatever it might be. So here you can see pretty quickly, you've got obviously back to creation. It's talking about evenings and mornings, but notice that that's actually a sequence. That's going to be important when it comes to Daniel. Notice that here you've got morning till evening. It does a pretty good job of identifying things, even though it's not like I performed a great syntax search or like anything at all. I just typed a question. And one of the things I would encourage everyone with this, if you're used to like inductive Bible study method or maybe another method, whatever questions you ask of the Bible, I would say use those questions in your AI search and just ask them. Just ask the question, and then get used to changing up here, what version, or if you're doing it from books. I'll show you how to do that in just a second. So if you were, evenings and mornings, you might come into your, noticing that it's in Genesis, for example. You might come into books and just say, is there any importance to the evenings and mornings in the creation account? Just a simple, like, oh yeah, I noticed it was in Genesis. Like, hey, I wonder if there's any. Now this is going to be in 32,000 books, and I can tell you right now, even though it takes a little bit, it's going to be a whole lot faster than if I were to open up all the 32,000 books. So it's performed
It didn't take
quick.
too long. I'm just saying. It didn't take too long.
That's not too bad. So here's the thing I want you to understand. It's going to determine, because I'm using all of the resources, I haven't really told it what books to prioritize per se, except for what I have in my prioritization lists in my library. So it's kind of a hit and miss as far as what books it's going to use for its synopsis, as far as like I haven't told it, hey, I want you to only use these books from a collection. But, and by the way, I did not use this search before. This was just on the fly. So notice, ironically, it tells me something about Daniel. Okay, so I'm already queued up to go. Apparently, there's some sort of connection, right? From Daniel back to Genesis, the account. And you get pretty good synopsis. The creation account in Genesis uses the terms evening and morning in specific ways to mark the days of creation. And the nice thing about the synopsis is now, if you want to, you can click on these and they will open up, the book and highlight where it is so that you can do further research and kind of understand. Now, this is a journal, which I love that it's pulling from a journal. That's some of the higher prioritized things that I appreciate it utilizing. Here they've got a statement. The pattern of evening and morning is repeated for each of the 6 days of creation. I have 2 items that I could utilize for this. This is Meredith Kline, which is actually a fabulous scholar, in a book called Covenantal Tale of Cosmos and Telos. By the way, I have not read this book. Okay, so I'm accessing it, but I'm only being told it's important in relation to what it is I'm actually researching.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it has saved me, to me, this feature saves tons of time, being able to use the actual books in a way that's helpful. So I'm seeing that there's a connection here. Daniel, the phrase evenings and mornings is also used here in a prophetic context where it is interpreted by some as representing a period of 2,300 years. Now I'm going to always look down here at, here are the four. Now here's where here's where it's important that you pay attention to the collections that you use, because if any of you are Daniel students, you'll know that this particular statement right here is actually very unique in the interpretation of evenings and mornings, and that is that 2,300 days. Well, why don't we go there? Why don't we just let's do. Oh, let me show you. Hold on. I got ahead of myself. Let me do this search again. I got ahead of myself, Jason.
I'm just letting it play out. I like watching you. That's good.
So if I was, you notice that when I moved over to another tab, it deleted the search. So I have no way of unless I stay in this frame, it's not going to remember my search. But if I come into, let's say, topical, and I do, let's say I'm doing evenings and mornings. Let's say I'm doing a search on that. So I'm just going to add a folder, evenings and mornings. Hit enter. Now all I have to do is drag this tab into this folder. Okay. And now I have this exact search that when I click on it, it tells you exactly what it is. And when I click into it, it's going to perform the search exactly the way I had it. So it's like incredibly simple, but it's very powerful to remember the things exactly how you performed it, what you did, all that stuff as you're moving through your search.
Yeah.
Now, I want you to notice, okay, if you go to, and I'll just pop this up, since Daniel 8:14 was the reference, you'll notice just by reading it quick that this says 2,300 evenings and mornings and does not say anything about days. So unless you have a background like myself, I used to be a Seventh-day Adventist. I am not anymore. I have since left that denomination. I've noticed very quickly that my library, because I told it to use all of my resources, it has pulled up in the Synopsis an Adventist material. This is actually a professor. This is Angel Rodriguez, is an Adventist scholar. Now, I could click into this. If you didn't know that, you could click into this. You could very easily find out what it is because you click on info and come down here and see where Biblical Research Institute, I've got it tagged Theology, SDA, but you can see kind of in the details. This is SDA Theology. So if you're doing research and you're like, don't just assume that whatever it says is like the best thing. It's using resources that you're telling it to look for to give you information, okay? So if you want to perform now the same search, and instead you want to use, let's say, just commentaries that are Daniel commentaries, for example, okay? Now, you may not have this particular collection, okay? But this top one right here is an automatic on the fly. Logos will allow you to make automatic kind of like predetermined collections, even though they're not like permanent collections that you've made. So depending on if you have collections or not, I'm going to use this particular one just because I think that's what most users will be able to kind of relate to. There's going to be 696 books now instead of 32,000 books. And I'm going to perform the same search. And we'll just see what it tells me differently and why. And this is, again, just part of my research. This is the way I kind of engage in working through content. And so here we go. Evenings and mornings mentioned in the creation account and elsewhere in the Bible have significant importance in Genesis. This phrase functions as a literary device to transition between days of creation, pointing to what comes next in a series. Then it gets into Daniel. This understanding is crucial for interpreting other passages where this should be understood as whole days, not. Okay, and here is a resource. Now, again, you won't know this unless you're Adventist. That's an Adventist book. Darcom is an Adventist book. So you're going to see real quick that, well, if I don't want Adventist theology, I can't just search everywhere. And I know many of you, I know that many of you pick up collections or book collections that have other theology in it that maybe you
they run the gamut,
do or don't want or whatever. That's where collections are going to come in handy so that you can kind of navigate through. So you're going to see most of these are actually Adventist. All of these actually. All of these are Adventist resources.
And when you say these, you mean your
all of these
resources that are Daniel resources. Just wanted to
clarify. So apparently the 696 books that it's looking at, it has prioritized these 4 that happen to all be Adventist resources at the top. Now, there are others, okay, down here that you can look through. Okay, so this particular one is not. Right. So you can look through others. But my point in showing this is when you're using the SMART tool, you also have to be smart about telling the system exactly what you're wanting them to look at. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to save this particular search. Again, it's as simple as that, okay? But I'm going to rename this. Now, it's going to be a little harder to see unless you
there we go.
Do this kind of thing. I do think this is a new feature, actually, where they actually made the searches, the actual titles, to say what your smart search is, which is really helpful because it tells you 696 books. Now, I'm just going to rename this, and I'm going to say, just because I want to know, I'm just going to put Adventist at the end, okay? So that I know, again, kind of what it is, what the collection is, and then know that it's got the Adventist response to it. Now, in order to do this next part, you'll probably have to be aware of collections a little bit, but you can create, I have created a collection that has all my resources minus Adventist resources. Okay, now that might be not that helpful for you. That's fine. You can
Did you do that with the formula in the collection?
I did. Yeah, I did. So now when we perform this search, same thing. Again, we've done 3 searches now very quickly. We've changed the collection sets to kind of give us, and notice that the synopsis is going to change dependent. Now, depending on how good that collection set actually is, will determine if it kicked out anything Adventist. None of these are Adventist scholars. Okay.
Yeah. There's Klein again.
I know just because I do a lot of research, and so I can tell who they are pretty quickly. So notice that the synopsis is different. Evening and mornings mentioned in the Genesis creation account as subject to various interpretations. This is more helpful for me because now it's like, oh, there are several different ways of looking at this. Tell me about them, and then give me the actual books and references that I can go study and research. And then it's going to go through and tell me kind of the details. So this, again, very easy to just come down here, save. I've got 3 searches. I don't have to remember what they were. I don't have to remember what question I have. I don't have to remember what collection set they are. It's very easy, very quick, and allows me to kind of remember that. So I'll pause there. You got any questions on that, Jason, as you kind of watched me work through it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first is, how did you think to do that? Because you were like, how can I put some guardrails on my searches in the future instead of having to comb through all the resources? Or did you pick this up somewhere?
I don't know if I can tell you exactly how. I think it's just a research habit.
Yeah.
That I've kind of applied to the way I've combed through a massive amount of books. I do find it interesting this is me just like testing the AI. I do this in Logos and outside Logos with AI. AI is only as good as like what you tell it and the data set that you give it. And like as you create better questions and better, especially outside of Logos, because they haven't yet built as robust as some other models outside of
Yeah.
Logos yet. I have a feeling they probably will. I hope they will inside of Logos. But it's just a habit of mine because the data that the AI gives you is going to be relative to what information you're giving it to look at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's all about the prompts, really.
Yep. Yep.
But I spend a lot of time with Logos users, and AI is a big concern. And this is like a nice way, this is a helpful, practical way to like be mindful of your research, even when using AI, because a lot of people associate AI equals evil and like there's no guardrails and like this is,
Yeah.
everyone's doing all the work for you, but you're being very thoughtful and very intentional in how you're using these tools. And that's part of our role, I feel.
Well, I think to be good stewards, I mean,
Yeah.
you have to realize that we're dealing with an ancient text if we're studying the Bible, and AI can be used in an appropriate way, but it also can be used inappropriately. I don't just take it for what it is. Like it hasn't become my study, but it would be silly of me to not embrace the power of what it is and learn how to use it in a way that honors the text and still allows me to think rather than
Mm-hmm.
letting it do all my thinking for me.
Yeah. You're engaging with
Yeah.
it. Yeah. And not just saying, do my work for me. But no, I think I didn't have more questions than that. I think that was an observation though, because a lot of people are real concerned with AI.
Yeah. So let me just show you. These are some that I have. Like I actually have a folder that there were some other previous ones that I had performed. I had one, and this is something I wanted to show that like the options are endless with this search feature.
I like where you're going with this
Because
one.
even if you're thinking like, I mean, yeah, we looked at how do I search my library, but I want to know sometimes what a specific author has
This
to
is
say
awesome.
about something. And so here we have, I've zeroed in. This is using a non-Colburn collection. This is author colon, and then I've added Schreiner to it because I've
Mm-hmm.
been reading Thomas Schreiner's kind of Pauline theology. And so there's 29 books here that are written um, by Schreiner, Thomas Schreiner. And I'm wanting to ask the AI questions that relate to his theology and how he sees things.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the power of this is that now I get to go read what it is that he says and see if I agree or disagree or kind of catalog it or whatever it might be. And so here we've got, it's just a simple search, what is Thomas Schreiner's position on Paul's use of the law in Romans? Simple question. Well, we've got a synopsis, okay? His position on Paul's use of the law in Romans is complex and nuanced. Oh, great. Okay. According to one of the articles, Schreiner acknowledges an apparent tension in Paul's writings regarding justification and works. He notes that while Paul disavows justification by works in some texts, he seems to teach justification by works in others, particularly in Romans 2:1. Now, here's what's cool is now I get to go look at just his, articles, journal articles, books, whatever it might be, and read on it. So here I'm going to open this up. This comes from a book called, it's actually a collaboration, 4 Views of Roles of the Word. Isn't that incredible? It actually pulled in a book that has other authors, but it's a book that's kind of integrating since he's one of
Mm-hmm.
the authors. So I can now read through this particular issue and situation. It's highlighted again because it's used several times. It's used down here as well. But to me, this is really helpful to identify if I'm studying a topic and I enjoy a particular author, Heiser, Schreiner, like John Walton or, whoever it might be, and you want to know what their position is on a certain text.
Yeah.
or a certain whatever, just type it into a search. And if it helps you, then save it. Like that's the methodology of just simple research using AI.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, it's not like it's not straight chat agent yet, but you could tee up questions based, engaging with the particular author's resources themselves. That's pretty cool.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, so I've done this couple other things. So like if any of you follow me at all on my YouTube channel, I do some things that are related to Adventism, but a lot of what I do is not related. And so I do a live stream that's at least once each weekend. Sometimes I go live 3 times on a weekend, depending on how much time I have. But we are working through Revelation, and we are in chapter 7, and I'm 24 episodes in, and they're all an hour and a half each. Okay. So to give you an example of how I might use something like this, G.K. Beal is someone that I actually really appreciate. I don't agree with all of his synopsis and his views, but here's an example of, because we were studying in Revelation 5 and 6 about many scholars see 5 and 6 as kind of a unit, and they see it as a divine counsel theme. And so I wanted to know, what does Beal state about the divine counsel in Revelation 5 and 6? And I've just dealt with his books that he's authored. And so it gives me, this is just I can't tell you how powerful this is. Like this is, talk about, I've got 30 some thousand books, and now I've quickly identified which books I want to look at and what I want it to spit out to me. And then now I can spend my time reading the sections in these books to help my research. It's just very, very quick, very powerful. And you can do this with anyone. You could do this, like, for instance, let's just duplicate this. And let's say we wanted to do author Aoun, David Aoun. There's 416 books that come up. That's interesting. I'm going to actually just do Aoun and see if that's different. Hang on.
Was it authors? Did it track it as 2 authors?
There we go. No, it's the space. There is something unique about, you can't have a space. Otherwise, it's somehow, I don't know what the syntax is and what it does, but it kind of adds additional stuff. So there's only 4 books in my library that have David Aoun. He's another guy that I really appreciate with regards to Revelation. So if I were wanting to ask the same question, what does David Aoun state about this? Now, I've not performed this search before now, so I don't know what it's going to kick out to me. I have no idea. Okay.
It's going to be a dad joke. Could you,
while it's popping up, what did the surgeon say when the man asked if he could do his own anesthetic?
He'll sleep on it.
Sure. Knock yourself out.
Come on, it was good. I thought I'd...
It was sleep on it was good. That was not bad. That wasn't bad.
Have you done a collection of 2 authors and had it lay out differences between views? Like Moon,
you could
Schreiner?
Do that. Yeah, you could absolutely do that. You could ask, what's the combating views between these two? The sky is the limit. Like, however creative you can come up with the prompts to tell it, and the connections between collections and all that stuff, like, it really is a powerful tool. So yeah, here's, he discusses it primarily in the context of heavenly court scenes. So again, if I'm doing this, I would just, here we go, and I just drag this down into, boom, done. I don't know why it moved down there, but there we go. And so now very quickly I can search between 2 different ones. And what's really powerful, I'll just go back to, sorry about that, the beginning. What's really powerful is that when I come back to later on, I've cleared my screen, I can just click in here and decide, I want the one on David Aoun. Boom, it does it. No big deal. I'm back where I was. So
awesome.
Yeah, it's just very helpful in remembering. Well, let me say it this way. It's helping you not have to remember, because you've stored them in the favorites bar.
That's so cool. I was taking a look at the last mile marker or goalpost there for us too. But yeah, this is wild. I hadn't seen anybody do that sort of like leveraging AI that way. So that's pretty cool. The do you want to jump into the last pit stop for us? Would be the context menu and the
Yeah.
search and morph.
Yeah.
Do you have time to tackle that still?
Sure. We can tackle it. I won't. Again, these menus are monstrous. There's a lot in here, especially with all the tagging and whatnot. But just for the record, I am not a Hebrew, Greek, Aramaic, Coptic languages. I'm not a scholar when it comes to linguistics and language. I rely heavily on these types of tools to at least provide some sort of language skill in kind of how I'm studying. So I'm not going to go through explaining all the ins and outs of all of this, but one of the things that I would say first off, before we get into the actual context menu, one of my favorite shortcut menus or shortcuts is when you're inside of your Bible. I don't know how many of you use the Interlinear, but Control-Shift-R if you're a PC cool user like me. If you're a Mac user, sorry, I don't know what it is. But I do this a lot.
Shortcuts too.
You do. It's probably like command whatever. I don't know. Because
It's
usually
probably
control is command.
something
So it's
cool
probably
though.
command shift. Maybe.
I don't know the reverse interlinear shortcut. I'm gonna look it up though. And anyways, someone's probably already dropped it in the comments by now.
Probably, yeah. So
okay, but yeah, so
when
you do
I'm
that
going
keyboard
live,
shortcut.
yeah, when I'm going live on my YouTube, I need like quick access to these types of tools, and so I use that, and then oftentimes I use the quick control plus or minus to make the screen bigger or smaller, because if you have it too big, you can't see. So that's helpful if you're needing to kind of make those adjustments quickly. And that only does it for this particular, it's not global as far as I understand. So this is helpful just to see information relating to, if I'm studying evenings and mornings, for example, and I'm not going to go through the details of the interlinear and what it is and isn't and all that stuff. But I will point out, because in our previous searches, you referenced some saying that it was days. You'll notice in the text, there is nothing that says days. This is actually the word for sunset, areb. This one here is the bokyor, I think. And if you want to know how it sounds, you can hit pronounce. If you kind of want to, yeah.
I didn't hear it, but
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever that is.
Day was just an interpretation of the evening and morning being one measured day, basically.
Yeah, so that's important for understanding how people get to that interpretation. Is instead of using the what the text actually says, it's like, oh, well, this phrase was found back in Genesis, and so because of that, because it denoted evenings and mornings one day, we're going to use that here. Well, that's fine, but that's not what the text actually says. You'll have to see if there's a linguistic reason for actually using that. So, the interlinear is helpful. This is the reverse interlinear. It's what I use. I don't use the actual interlinear, which puts it on the screen in full access.
The inline,
but then
I think it is.
Yeah, I don't use that one because I think that makes more sense if you actually understand the language. That's just my my understanding anyways. So the context menu, one thing that you'll want to be familiar with is make sure you've got the lemma highlighted, at least for what we're going to do here. And then one tool that people don't use a ton is this lookup. In fact, I'm forgetting his name. What was the main of he passed away. He has a Logos
Morris
teaching.
Proctor?
Yes. He called this the top 5 prioritization. I don't know what it was that
Mm-hmm.
the power 5 or something like
Mm-hmm.
that he called it.
Yeah.
But these are going to be different for every user because these are dependent on how you have your priorities set up in your library.
Yeah.
So in here, if you come under priorities, yours is going to be way different than mine. I've got all kinds of crazy stuff set up.
It's just all about how you prioritize, and then that'll actually
Yep.
change
Yep.
the search options.
So functionally, it says, this lemma, what are the top books that Mike's set up in his library to look for that has that particular lemma in it?
Mm-hmm.
And then those are the ones that are going to pop up down here in your lookup. So this is DDD, which I use a lot, Dictionary of Deities and Demons. It's just very quick access to the actual lemma. Isn't that interesting? It says Raven, and that's evenings. It's interesting, huh?
I want to know why, but
Yeah, I know. Why did it go there? Hang on.
it's the root. It's the lemma.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it is.
So, anyways, that's a side rabbit trail that you would be on, and then you
Mm-hmm.
could go back to the AI and say, why is this word in this book? And you could ask it all kinds of stuff. Like,
Right.
that's the cool part. Okay. So I would say first and foremost, get used to if you're wanting quick access to books that you've prioritized at a high level in your library, use these. They're going to give you at least the top resources when you're trying to do some language searching. This one came up a little differently than this one. And so I would get in the habit. That's the way I get quick access to the top 5 resources as it relates to lexicons and Bible dictionaries that actually use the original language. So that's the first thing I would say in the context menu is lemma on the left and then the power lookup. If you're wanting to search the original language with a phrase, this is what I have found. I'm going to share this because I have found as a non-Hebrew speaking, like I don't get the language, okay?
Yeah.
I don't understand it. So what I've learned is that if I'm looking for, well, hey, I want to search for evenings and mornings.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, if I select this, Logos currently does not select the proper Hebrew. I can't select a Hebrew phrase.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
In this way. If I do this, I can do it through the English, but if I perform an English search, for example, like if I search the Bible, all it's doing is looking for the actual English words. So that's not help. I mean, that's archaic. That's not helpful. That doesn't help me get access to the original. I want to know the actual phrase in the order evenings and mornings, whatever the actual Hebrew is. Well,
Yeah.
if you come down here and you notice like this in the interlinear and is not present. Okay. That's why there's a dot there. It's not actually in, that's an added conjunction to help us English speaking individuals understand. And you'll notice there's a 6 and there's a 7.
Maybe there's no conjunction there because it's just understood as the word day.
Probably
Sorry.
not.
Okay, go ahead. When those two words are together.
So I got to thinking once, again, this is what I try to think through. Like, okay, how can I be an intelligent Bible student and use the tools? Like, where would I need to go? Well, I would need to go to an actual Hebrew Bible, right? I mean, that's what I would need to do. Now, there's a couple things you can do. You can use I still am getting used to the way these are formatted, just to be very transparent.
The dynamic toolbar.
Yeah. Where is all right. You can add a parallel text. So like if I did the Lexham Hebrew Bible. Now this one is, you'll see it pulled up the information, but you'll notice that when I highlight this, you'll see that because I have It's part of the settings in here to tell me to highlight the same thing in a corresponding words.
Highlighting.
So I know without having to identify the actual words, I know that these are the two Hebrew words in the Hebrew text. And I can check that by looking down here, evenings. You can see the actual structure. Here's the manuscript. There's the word. Like, yeah, that's the same word. You can tell.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to read it, but I can tell it looks the same. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Same with this. That's the same word. So if I highlight here in the text, notice that it gives me Hebrew now in the selection. So I can highlight and then I can copy this. And now I can open a search and I can go to a Morph search. Actually, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go to a Hebrew Bible and I'm going to perform a precise search. And I'm going to Control V and there's the Hebrew words. And I'm going to hit search.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's not performing this in the same order, okay? It's just using the actual lemmas, the actual original language, so that I can now look at, and it adds, since I'm using a Hebrew Bible, it adds, you can add versions over here to kind of identify. So I can go through, and instead of relying on the English translation, I can actually make sure I'm paying attention to the actual language, even though I don't know how to understand the language without a tool like this.
Mm-hmm.
And so this becomes very helpful with regards to performing language searches without actually knowing how to understand the language itself. Now,
Mm-hmm. there
there are additional things you can do because, and this is where I have to say, I'm still trying to learn this because you know that if you put things in brackets, if you're performing a search and you put quotation marks, it will, this is the part that I can never figure out with Hebrew, is where that end one is. There you go. So if you, again, Hebrew's odd in here just because it's reversed right to left instead of left to right. So you have to figure out how to add the quote marks. But if you do, you can look for the original language, the original manuscript words in your search with properly copying the actual language over to a search. And then from here, and this is what I would tell you to do, is if you're wanting this in your evenings and mornings, so you don't have to go through all the work of doing this again, save it. Save it in your favorites. That's where it becomes powerful. So like you're just going to save it down here. Now I've got it right there. I don't have to finagle things and figure out this, that, whatever. And now that I have it in here, I can copy this and use it in other places. So if I want to do, let's say I want to do all of my Daniel, let's just do my commentary set here. Where is this phrase discussed? I don't know. I'm just making up something. It's going to give me all kinds of stuff that I may or may not be able to understand, depending on, but here we go. Okay. The phrase is discussed in context of an angelic dialogue, according to, but check this out. Like, I get a hit. Like, now, this is verbal syntax. Okay. But what's powerful, and I don't even know, let me look at this. Wow, this is Bible commentary.
So it's quoting, it looks like it's quoting Daniel 8.
It's just quote. So this is just quoting. This is a commentary where the guy's quoting. Yeah, so that's not super helpful. But you can see how like connecting these things together in your kind of endeavor to study, you can begin to, and once you find something that you like, don't forget to save it to your favorites menu, because that's how you save your time later when someone asks you a question and you're like, man, I remember I had that search and I don't remember. Well, you've got it. It's right here. You don't have to worry about it. Yeah.
You have me wondering if you have like a second more, and then if you have a little bit more time, you have me wondering, and I tried in the background, but I didn't want to. I wanted to hear what you and see what you were sharing too. But you had me wondering about going to the context menu in the BHS or the Lexham Hebrew. Can you select a series and right click on like Aravakor in
Like
the
this?
yeah, right there. Can you
Yeah.
I was wondering if there's a way to search both of those together, grammatical constructs like that on the left side.
So in the context menu, I mean, this is, as long as you're identifying a Hebrew Bible and then searching. So down here, you're going to have several different searches
That's what I was
in
thinking
the,
right there.
yeah. So you can perform, this is an inline morphology search, or you can perform in a, and I'll just search this. That's not going to be anywhere else. But
Yeah,
I
what
mean,
I was
look at this
I think that
syntax.
ideally, and this is if I were doing the search similar to what you were doing there, I think I'd want to get rid of all the vowels. I'd want just the two or the two lemma dictionary words. Like I'd want to see how those are. There you go. Like Psalm 55 and 18. That looks like you've got a great example there of another place that this is being used. And the vowels change because of the sentences and stuff like where it is in the sentence and those kinds of things. And
Yeah.
so
And so
this is
you can add a, I don't know why it's taking so long. So you can add,
awesome. Yeah.
so you can
Yeah.
see
So
it if you,
it looks like see the vowels and the markers changed on the two
yeah.
words, but you're actually working with the lemmas there, which is great. And then you could even, I mean, this is more advanced, but you could, in the search, you could kind of manipulate it and get rid of all the additional, if you wanted to
Yeah, and
remove the plural and those kinds of things. But
correct. And inside of the morph search, I mean, technically, if you click into here, you can actually change the
just kind of like
actual
remove some
structure.
of those extras. But this is really,
Yeah, if
really
you wanted
cool the
to.
way that someone who doesn't know Greek or Hebrew and could actually run searches and get better acquainted with how it's used canonically instead of just being like what's happening right here in Daniel 8
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
in Genesis. Yeah.
The other thing, and I wanted to, one of the things that can't do two things at once. Oh, by the way, shift click takes away that thing. I learned that. There you go. So you can shift click and it automatically turns it on and off. So there's that.
Shift click.
Shift click. Yes.
Nice.
One of the things that I have, if we go to like, let's go to Revelation for example, and I'm going to turn off that, and let's just find, I don't know, let's say I'm just picking one random here. One of the things I know is a good thing to do as a Bible student, but until Logos, I didn't really know how to do it. And that is, how do I figure out the corresponding Greek, like the Greek word that corresponds to the Hebrew? Because a lot of times, people will say, well, I want to know what the Old Testament equivalent is to this word. Well, first of all, they're different languages. Okay. So sometimes there aren't equivalents. But one of the things that is helpful is coming in here, selecting this lemma, and you can do a Bible word search that will give you the Septuagint down here. And the Septuagint then is the word that you would use. Here it's giving you separ, but you could then use these words as a way to perform searches now using, either the verse. I mean, there's a couple ways you could do it. You could click into the verse and identify, and this is the hard part, because like I don't read Hebrew, and so this is the word. I have to turn on this and identify. Oh, it's not clicking in. Hang on a second. Here we go. So separ. So book. This is the one. So I can reasonably quick uncover, the Greek equivalent. By now, I can use either the Hebrew or the Greek, and then I can open up a Septuagint and search in the Septuagint
Right.
using the Greek word to see how the Septuagint translators kind of utilize that particular word. And you'll find different
Yep.
searches using that versus versus performing a search on the Hebrew word. They won't always be the same, and you can compare those.
Yeah. That's awesome. Man, I feel like my mind is blown. I was like checking to see if there was anything else that wasn't covered. And I think that covers our list, but I don't want to end without sharing, and I'll put the links to these in the description, about the Thinking Cup and then your YouTube channel.
Yeah.
So do you want to say something to that before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, and I know that Jason's going to share my contact info if anyone wants to connect. I do have a Discord community on my QR code connection card. If y'all want to be a part of a group of people that love to study the Word of God and ask nerdy questions, and I hate to tell you this, but there's also going to be some Adventist stuff because there's people that are in that community that are former Adventists, and so there is some of that dialogue as well. But yeah, thethinkingcup.com, you're welcome to check that out. It's kind of the blog where I do my articles and post items there from a writing standpoint. And then searching the word is my YouTube handle for all of my live streams for that, which we do all kinds of stuff. I'm doing currently a 7-part series on covenant theology that usually drops midweek. And then we're doing a study for however long it needs to happen for Revelation. I'm going to go through the whole book, exegete the whole book. We're looking at, through the lens of the Old Testament, just seeing what John uses, the language and imagery and symbology and all the, the stuff in the Old Testament. And so we're kind of seeking that stuff out, and it's taken a long time. It'll probably be, 60 episodes, 70 episodes. I don't know how many it'll be. It'll be a lot.
Yeah.
And then I do interviews as well. So I ask authors and other people to come on and kind of engage in things. So yeah, that's how you connect with me. I'd love to interact, love to help.
All of those links and then the QR code will be floating around somewhere as well. So all those links will be in the description. So go and subscribe to Mike's channel and check out the blog.
Awesome.
Yeah, man. Thank you, Mike. This was good. It was like great context for AI. It was really insightful for using the favorites tool in a way that would actually benefit people. And then the ability to get to the Greek and Hebrew, even if you don't have a biblical exegesis degree of some kind. It's just like, it's right there. And so I hope it also removes some of the intimidation for people who want to study using Logos. Really grateful for your time, for sure. Thanks for spending some time here. It sounds like you've got a lot of streaming and studying to do, so I appreciate you taking the time. And then anybody who's not subscribed already to the channel here or to Mike's channel, make sure you subscribe and follow along. There's a lot of other interviews in the playlist, so check out those interviews as well. So I hope that this was very helpful, insightful. Mike?
Hey, Jason, before we exit, I'm always trying to, I don't know if the person that will know this is going to be watching, but I'm seeking out an answer, and it's to the person that invented the zero, whoever invented the number zero.
They're likely watching.
I just wanted to say thank you for nothing.
Kind of wanted to sit with that for a second. Thanks, Mike.
It's my pleasure, man. Thanks for being here.